All right, so I told y'all today we're just gonna set kind of up in the terminal here and walk through awk, and hopefully this will clear a whole lot of things up. So before we kind of get into that, let's actually take a look at kind of what we learned about the syntax of it. So you can remember, I kind of described 4 ways. I've got 3 here. So I guess the 4th way would be combining the first 2 methods. So we've got that method where it's entirely on the command line. Of course, we can have the begin block, we can have that end block, and of course, the majority of what takes place is going to be in that kind of that body section right there, and that's kind of like that built-in for loop there. And then, of course, we have our source file that's going to be fed into it, and that's what drives our code here. And then we also have this method where we could take all of that awk code right here and put it in some type of text file there, and we can just feed into it. And are y'all able to see this okay? All right, y'all let me know at any point in time if y'all can't see that. And then, of course, we have just the awk script method here, and that's where you create just an awk script. So there's the downside of this is you don't have access to Bash programming language at that point. And I don't like to do the awk script because there's so many good utilities that we can integrate with it and combine the two. And we get so much better features that way. But if you want to, you can actually create that awk script. Of course, you got to change the shebang, and then everything's the same. The begin, kind of the body of the code right there, and the end block right there. And don't get confused with this part right here, because you're as far as the curly braces, you don't put all the code within the curly braces. I should have actually put like the word pattern. Your pattern goes first, and then your action is within those curly braces. So I probably need to change that to just like action or pattern, then action. So it's a little bit better. And then if we can recall, we have some of those built-in variables right there. So don't get confused because I can guarantee it's going to be on your exam coming up. The $0 is the current record. So what is the current record? Yeah, so by default, it's going to be line 1 in the actual source file that we're sending to it. And then what is like $1 through whatever number? Yeah, so field meaning the column that are in that. We can always think of it as that Excel spreadsheet, right? That kind of helps that. And then we have FS, which is going to be that field separator. Then we have our output field separator. And then NR is the record number. So that's just the line number. And then NF is going to be basically the columns. How many columns? It's going to return 1 number. So if we split it up into 4 columns, it would just return 4. Of course, we have to make sure we specify the correct delimiter, or otherwise it would just come back as 1 column because it would read the whole line as a single column of information. All right. That's a good refresher right there. Now, if we wanted to actually, if we wanted to see like the source file here, so this is going to be a file that we're going to be working with today. If we wanted to create the equivalent kind of cat command, just to be able to see what the file is in awk, it's a little bit more robust here. We would have to say print, and then we would give it S1, and that is the equivalent cat command right there. So as you can see right there, sometimes awk isn't as efficient, so it'd be better for us to use the cat command, kind of integrate that bash in there. But there it is, the equivalent cat command there. Now, let's take a look. If we went in here and we actually said print $0, so what am I telling it to print? The current line, and of course it's this right here, it's that for loop, right? So it's just going to print however many lines are in, it's going to print that entire record in that. So it's going to do the exact same thing that print, because print just defaults to printing the current record, but we can actually specify if we want to print $0. Now let's go and let's say if I wanted to print the first column, then I could say print $1 here. Be careful on when you add stuff. So if we want to see the full file, we would actually have to go in here and we could say $2. So that's going to give us the first 2 columns, but let's take a look at how it does it. Now that's not how we want it, right? No. So it's better to go ahead and put a comma in there, and we can actually delete the space, or we could keep it. It doesn't really matter. We hit enter. Now we're getting what we want. So what is taking place is we're feeding it arguments. And then if we separate those arguments by a comma, then it knows to go ahead and use the output field separator, which by default is going to be the space. So now we can build this whole thing out here just by doing, oops, yeah, it is $3, and then we can throw in $4 here. And we've rebuilt, I think, the entire thing, right? Let me pull up here. This is what I have this for. So let's do S1. Yeah, so we got 3 columns, but it's pretty ugly, right? Yes.
Why are we throwing $4 in there? There's only 3 columns.
Because I'm not paying attention. There. Good catch. So yes, let's see what else right here. So we have that. Now, if we wanted to rearrange it, we could also rearrange it. So I could put one I could duplicate if I wanted to, or I could come in here and just rearrange the entire thing right there. So now we kind of swapped everything out right there. All right, now let's take a look at a different file here. So I'm gonna go ahead and cat out this S4 here. All right, so what's different? What's unique about this file compared to the other one? Yeah, I know it's probably tiny up there, but yes, it is a CSV file. So let's actually see if we can work with that. So we'll go ahead. Yeah, I'll just build it all out. So we'll print, and then we'll put in so there it is, print it out. Now, again, we could do that $0, but in this case, we're going to do $1. And so now I'm going to hit enter here. And so I want that first column being printed, and I hit enter. What went wrong? What you got?
We need to add the dash capital F. Or is it the delimiter?
Yes, that is perfect. Glad you're catching on there. So if I wanted this to actually be right, now remember there's multiple ways. This is just one of the methods that we're going to use. So we're going to do dash capital F. The small f is actually for that if you had code in a text file. So we got to do the capital F here. And so once I have that, now we're actually getting what we want, and we can build this thing out completely again. So we can do $2, $3, and then here I'll just put a space in and do $4 because this one does have 4 columns there. And you can see that space did not affect the spacing whatsoever on here. All right, now we're going to integrate some of the named variables that are kind of built into it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this for a second, and we can still use this same source file here. So I'm going to use NR. So NR is that record number. So as you can see, for every single line, it went ahead and printed the line number right there. So we just got 12 records in this file. And then if we wanted to integrate that, we could go ahead and just go to the beginning here and do NR comma, and then note how the built-in variable doesn't have that $sign. Remember, all variables are just text only, except for these kind of column and then the actual record itself. Those anything that uses a number basically is going to have that $sign in it. The rest is just normal. So now you can see we actually have that line number proceeding out there. Now I'm going to show you, we'll go back to that first file here. If I can actually get this to come up. All right, so in this one, we're using the S1 colors, which we had up here previously. And this is just kind of pointing out how, in Bash, how we have the echo statement, we put everything within double quotes. And we can do that because all the variables have that special $ symbol. But in awk, we do not have that. So now if we want to integrate some text in here, so you can see I've got the entire record, and then I've got the actual literal text in double quotes. Then here's a variable, and then again, double quotes right there. If I was to put the NF within the double quotes, then it would no longer have any meaning as far as a variable goes. So it's a little bit, it's not as nice and pretty, I guess, what I'm trying to get at right there. You just kind of got to remember that it will not interpret those variables. So you could have multiple sections of quotes in there. And then if we wanted to say put a space after the record there, so we'd have to actually just put a space using inside the quotes right there. So therefore it kind of pads it out right there. Let's take a look we'll come back to that one. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at kind of those built-in blocks. And then with this one, we'll actually use the Etsy password file here. So I'm going to want to print, and I'm going to print the Etsy password file. Oops, I need the root Etsy password. Now you can see here is all the users on the system. Again, we'll cover that here in a few weeks when we'll be manipulating this file a little bit. So if I wanted to then kind of see how many columns are in this right here, I could say print NR instead. Now, why did all the records go away? Sorry, say that again. Perfect. So I gave it that argument, and since it actually has an argument, I'm telling what to do, that default argument of printing the current record goes away right there. Now, here is a very important concept to understand. I'm going to go in here and make a simple change. I'm going to say begin. So remember, begin is just that special block that's at the beginning that we tend to set up all of our variables at. So now I'm going to hit enter. And is that what you expected for me to get? So can anybody tell me, why did I get 0 now that I put the begin in front of my action? Perfect. So at this point, understand that begin block, it hasn't read that source file. It has no idea of its existence as far as what's in it or anything. So it hasn't read it whatsoever. So once it actually hits that begin block here, and then you can see that NR, basically NR is already set to 0. And then for every line, NR just gets like NR++. So it just increments it. So that way we have this count number, but that has not taken place right here. So we get 0. All right. So if I was to go in here now, and let's change this to end, what do y'all think I'll get? 30? Take a look. 29. So all it does is we reach the end of our record, and now that variable has its value. And then the end block is where we kind of want to do all of our summary information. So all the information that we gather from that kind of the body section right there, and all those variables that are updated, they just stay the same value. It holds those values, and then we can then use those values in our summary at the end there. All right, so here is an example. I'm just going to copy it out real fast of kind of like ways that we want to use this. So in the begin block, it's a good place to set up a header right here. So if I do this and we scroll all the way up right here, you can see that I did a print statement in the begin block, and it said report by Jay Corcoran. So it just created a nice little header for me at the very beginning. Of course, we could set multiple lines. We could do all kinds of things in there. And then at the end, let's just go ahead and add that end block here. So I'm going to go in here, and we'll just actually need to be right there. Paste that in. So I'm just putting this in the end section right here, and I'm saying print NR. So NR, whatever its value, so however many records, and then we're going to get that kind of text at the end right here. So now you can see it just prints at the end. We got 29 records in the file. Of course, I still have my header here at the beginning, and this is what all took place in kind of the body of our code there. Any questions so far? Are we scroll back up? Perfect. And so here's kind of the code we did, and this is where it starts right there. So our begin block right there, and then the kind of the body of our code right here, which was just the print statement right here. So I gave it no pattern. All I did was give it an action of print. So when it encounters the current record, it just prints the current record, and that's it. All right.
Each of the braces, each of the sensor braces kind of signify separate blocks.
Yes. So you've got, it's a little bit confusing to me sometimes on this. So you have the begin, and then so everything within those curly braces, that belongs to begin.
So it's just that one section code.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, just that first one that is attached. Like if you do another curly brace, it assumes that since it's not attached to that begin block, that is the body of the code right there. And then where people will get confused is, you can cheat because like I said, you could set up a pattern and have no action, or you could set up an action and have no pattern. So in here, if I just set up a pattern, again, a pattern has no curly braces in there. So it would just be a pattern there with no curly brace whatsoever. But that's just because it's the pattern and that's what expects kind of in the middle there. So you don't have to necessarily put your code within these braces within the body. It just so happens that that's how it separates the pattern from the action. And of course, if you do things explicitly all the time, you would set up your pattern and then have an action after that. All right, any other questions on this? Okay, good. All right, so now let's integrate actual like a column here. So let's see, we're still working with this color file that's up there. So I'm gonna just say awk, and then we're gonna print. And then let's do the S1 here. So again, we have that file. And now I'm gonna set up an actual, I'm kind of gonna be narrowing my information down. I'm gonna give it that pattern. So we could say $2, and we could say $2 is gonna be equal to yellow. So that is my search that is taking place. So if we look at the second column, yellow here, yellow here. So now if I hit enter, you can see what happened. It did our search, it found the yellow right there, and then we just gave it the default print. So it's just going to print the entire record of that. Now we could isolate that, say that we don't care about the information coming after that. We just want to know what is yellow within that. Then we could go ahead and just say, okay, we'll print $1. Now you can see we did our search and we just got the first column data to come back to us there. We can even do some math operators here. So let's just change this right here. We'll change this to, I think it's $3. And then we can say greater than 5 here. We hit enter. Then you can, well, actually, let's go ahead and print the entire record right here. So it'll be a little bit easier to kind of validate that. So you can see all of these are greater than, and then of course we got this header right here, and understand that it's just basing it off of the ASCII table. So the numbers came first. So anything that is, letters come first right here, the lowercase letters. So obviously everything, gosh, I'm trying to think. Numbers come first, so amount, letters would be greater. There, I finally got it out. All right, regular expression. So we're going to integrate that in here. So let's go ahead. We'll do awk. And we'll just go ahead and start it off. $2. And I think what we'll do is we'll do this one right here. I'll try this. So that's my regular expression, and I'm going to delete that out so we can show a global regular expression first. And then we're going to give it the action of print, and we'll close that up and give it our file here. All right. So again, I didn't actually point that out, but we're on the command line. So everything has to be within those single quotes. That's how it separates the awk code from the bash there. And now I do the regular expression. And since I just put the regular expression within those slashes, it's going to read on the current line and figure out, okay, is there anything that has a P? What does the dot represent? Can anybody remember? Any character. What about the plus? One or more. All right. So any character, one or more. And then of course it has to have a P coming after that at some point. So that's how I got purple, and then the pineapple here. All right. Now, if we wanted to actually isolate this, so we could say, let's do it on a single column. So we're going to say $1. And if we're not going to do a global one, then we have to add the tilde in there. So that it means the regular expression is going to be performed on the first column. And let's shrink this down. And we're just going to say, is it P plus? Is that what I wanted to do right there? Yeah. So P has to happen one or more times in there. Let's see if I was to isolate it down a little bit more, the caret symbol here. and I hit enter. Now we're actually, what was the caret symbol for? Beginning of the line. Yeah. So right here, now we got plum, potatoes. So that's all happened. We've isolated it down to just that single column there. All right. So all the regular expressions we've learned, even like the extended regular expressions. So if I wanted to search for, let's say, anything that has two P's and to infinity on that, I could hit enter. And then now it's going to pick up anything that has two P's within there. So apple, pineapple there, it all gets it there. So you don't have to specify anything extra for that extended regular expression. It's just going to work for us. All right. Now we're going to be messing with the built-in variables for the field separators. So I have a different file for that. So we're going to cat out the S2 here so you can kind of see it's a CSV file again. Just got some fruits in there. And yeah, y'all can see that. Let me click that there. So we're going to do awk again and print. And then feed it that S2. And of course, then it's going to print it out. Now, if we wanted to, again, kind of isolate a single column, we hit enter, and then what's going to happen? Perfect. It's going to print everything. All right. So the method we saw earlier was doing like dash capital F, or we could do dash dash field separator and then specify it there and then hit that. That works. Or we could go ahead and instead in bash to pass that information in there, we could set that up actually within the awk code. And we're going to do that within the begin block. And so that is going to be FS for field separator. So we just set FS equal and in quotes there. And then again, close up our block there and that will work. We could even, I like to space things out, but understand you don't have to actually space that. It knows to, that's something separate. So we don't have to worry about those spacings. Now, if I wanted to manipulate how it's actually being output, so let's go ahead and see. I think I'm going to do this right here first. This is really important. So I now want to change the output field separator. And because this is all on the same line, if it was on different lines, I wouldn't have to put the semicolon, but because it's on the same line, we need to separate it with the semicolon. So let's set that equal. Let's say we're going to set it to a colon here. All right, so I hit enter. Now, is that what y'all thought would happen? All right. Anybody guess what is actually happening?
Well, you're just printing the kernel record. You're not actually splitting it. So it's just being a big long.
Yes, very, very good. This is something you need to understand because it will mess people up all the time right here. $0 is and always is the current record as it's read. That's it. So if we want to actually split this thing up, then we've got to be explicit and go in here and set up all of the columns as we actually want them to be printed. So now we go in here and then boom, we have all of our information just the way we want it there. Okay, now, how would I actually save this output right here? All right, so tell me, how do I do that? Redirection. And then just give it a file, right? So we'll just test.out here. Yeah. Oops, that's the wrong one. Perfect. So understand, like all we got to do is at the very, very end of our awk code right there, we can simply add that redirection arrow, then boom, just save it all to a file. You could write an entire awk script and then have it run. And then just at the end of that awk script, before you run it, just put the redirection arrow and then put the file out there. And then boom, you just saved all the output that your whole script did to a file. What you got?
Like, kind of like using Python.
Yes, we'll actually see an example of that. It can actually take in output multiple ways. I'll try to hit several of them as we go through here. Okay, so now we're going to kind of switch gears for just a second before we move on to like actual like huge amounts of code, and we're going to talk about printf. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll do this. So we're going to be working with this file S4, and I'll just put it over here so we can reference it later. So here again, we've got employees all comma separated, so it's a CSV file, but this looks pretty ugly. So we're just going to continue to build this out, and unfortunately it's going to run off a little bit. I wonder if I could just think here, Control C, we could do PS1 equal to, and we'll just, heck, I'll just do a $sign. There, now give us a little bit of room on here. All right, so let's bring this, pop that back up there. So got our file. All right, so now we're going to change this to a printf statement. So the very first thing, all we got to do is put that F on there. And the very first thing, a printf statement, it wants your actual format string. So we put that within those double quotes. So we've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need to set up all of our placeholders. The first line is numbers here. So let's go ahead and set that to a %D. And then we've got strings everywhere else. So we'll just pop in some placeholders for some strings there. Now that we have that, we need to give it our arguments. Our arguments and our format string has to be separated by a comma. And then we feed in our arguments, and those arguments need to be separated by commas as well. So let's go ahead and do $2, $3, and then $4. So that should be good. We hit enter. Now, is that prettier? That's pretty ugly, right? Anybody see what I did wrong? Perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's just clear the screen a little bit here. We'll pull that back up, and now let's go ahead and we'll just put a /n at the end here. Oop, nope, that ain't right. It has to be within the format string. So now if we hit enter, we actually got something that's slowly starting to look pretty good, but it's still not actually aligned, right? So we need to build out some more. Anybody remember what we can do to kind of build this out to make everything line up?
Make it like right, left align.
Yep, you're perfect. You're on the right track right here. So you can see we got numbers right here. They're 3. So let's just go ahead and throw 3. And then of course I've got this space. So that kind of gives it a padding of 4 right there. And then I don't want to sit here and count, but I know it. So we're just going to say all of these need to be left aligned with 8 characters. So we're just going to do left align 8. And we could do this to the end right here, but there's nothing coming after it. So there's really not a point in it. So now we hit enter, and now everything is starting to look pretty good. Does anybody see a problem in comparison to, well, it didn't happen there. I don't have anything to compare it to right here. The problem with this is I did a %D right here, and then it's trying to change my header, which was ID. We look over at this right here, you can see ID was there, but I changed it to decimal. So that's an issue, but we'll deal with that issue here in a little bit, not right now. But at least we got some good output that is, it's nice and pretty. Everything's in a column right there, so it's easy to read and it's all separated. All right, now let's actually deal with the first problem here. And that is, let me see if I somehow have the wrong file updated. So we'll just work through this. What is the way we remove headers in Bash? Okay. So let's do tell -n +2. And then of course that's our source file, which what are we, S4 here. All right. So I have that. Now we can see, boom, we got it. That looks great right there. All right. So now let me go ahead and just copy our code that we up here. And then I'm going to up arrow. So I have that. I can now pipe this, go ahead and paste in here, and then we hit enter. And then now everything's perfect. We just pipe this in there. Now, let me point out something real quick before we do that. Note this right here. All right. In awk, you know, the very last thing that we add, right, is that source file right here. So this is a part where you're going to have to be careful. Some of this got you with your sort command as well. When you pipe something, let's say we pipe something to sort. So we sent the data to sort, but then you're used to putting the file that you're sending to sort at the end. So if you manipulated the data in some way with a command and then piped it to sort and then gave sort the actual original file again, it overwrites. Same thing in awk right here. Here I removed the header. I then sent that by piping it to awk. Awk did perfect with it. You can see up here, there is no header whatsoever. But then we get used to, at the end, go ahead and send a tagging on that source file. So what we did is we just threw away all of the work that we did here because awk did exactly what we told it to. It then sent this after all this completed to awk, and then it worked with that file instead of the file that we piped to it. So just be careful. We changed how we were sending data to awk. So don't duplicate that work in there. So we just need the one without it at the end here, and then we're going to get that perfectly. All right. So we could do it that way, and that's pretty nice. It makes quick work of it, but there's actually another way we can do that. Let's go back all the way to here. Actually, yeah, that's the one I want to work with. All right, so what I could do is I could go in here, right? Let's see. Do I want to do that in the begin? No, I want to do it as a pattern here. Okay, so I could set a pattern and I could say NR is greater than 1. So let me space all that so it's a little bit better. So I set a pattern here, and the pattern now says, okay, the only time this action could actually occur right here is if the current record is greater than 1. So now that I hit enter, you can see that it skipped the header, and this will make a little bit more sense. Let's see if I was to throw in, I'll do it this way so we actually see a mistake right here. So I just threw in the argument of NR because I want to send it to printf, but I did not update any type of placeholder for it. So what it did is it threw everything off. You see, I don't have my 4th column there anymore, but I do have those record numbers. So that one right there can easily mess you up. This one right here, I get quite a bit. Let's just say if I want to actually put that number in there, so I give it a placeholder, we'll left aligned it, and it's going to be a decimal here. And now I hit enter. You get this, and I get this in an email quite often, but understand it is telling you exactly what is happening. There are not enough arguments to satisfy the format string. So there are 5 placeholders here. There's only 4 sets of arguments being supplied to it. So hopefully that'll save you some hardship right there. But if I put in NR now I have 5 placeholders and 5 arguments. I can hit enter. And then you can see that line number 1 is not being printed. It was skipped because we set a pattern, kind of a condition that says this action can only take place if the current record is greater than 1. Or we could say NR is, well, no, you wouldn't want to say NR is equal to 2, because then this would only print if the record was 2. That wouldn't work at all. All right. Any questions on that? So that's a pretty cool trick, that right there. And actually it's a lot less code right here because you just can put it right into that condition right there. So. All right, so now we're going to move on to kind of an external script right here. So clear the screen, we'll cat out this script called awk.txt. The first thing I want to do here, let's actually open this up in Vim. I'm going to show you a neat little trick. So we do Vim 05. Then I'm going to delete this because oftentimes this is how you do it, because it's just a text document. It's not an actual script whatsoever. So there's no need to have the shebang, because what we're going to do is we're going to use that -F to pass this code to awk. So again, no need for a shebang. The downside to that is we don't have any of the awk syntax highlighting here. So if I want that, then I could actually add that shebang in there. So it was /user/bin/awk and then -F. And then if we close that out, reopen that, And what is wrong? Oh, I did the shebang wrong, didn't I? Exclamation, right? So now let's close it up, save. Yeah, now we got our nice syntax highlighting. So this right here, what am I doing right here?
Got a regex checking, we've got it encapsulated in slashes so that it evaluates it as a regex. And then you're checking only for things that start with an A at the beginning of the line.
Perfect. And then if it does, what is it going to do? If it finds it, if it's true.
We'll print the string encapsulated in the double quote. So for line 2, it'll look that regex, so we'll find stuff that begins with A in the line, and then it'll actually print capital A colon space, and then $0, which is that whole record.
All right, perfect. All right, so we're using that S1 file here. So let's go ahead and bring that up over here so we can just see the file. And then now if I want to run this, we can do awk-f, and I'm going to feed it that 05 file. So this right here is the actual code. Here's the source file that we're feeding to it, and we hit enter. Now, is that what you kind of expected? So let's just do head here on that 05 and walk through this because it's an important concept to understand here. So here is the output of me running it. And then here is the code. So how did apple get here and then banana and then apple? Can y'all explain that looking at the code there? Why wasn't it apple, apple, and then banana? So we got our source file over there, right here. So we just, what? Okay, go ahead.
So I think awk is going down each record in chronological order. And for each record, it's running that code, the caret A, caret B. And so it says name, color, amount, and source file. Right after that, it gets the red apples, and then it executes that top line, print A, because that's what the regex picks up. And then just keeps going down, takes banana. Passes through strawberry, grape, and then picks up apple again.
Perfect, perfect. I can tell you 50% of the class gets this question wrong on the exam. So I'm giving you a hint right here. You truly need to understand how it's being processed. So if you didn't hear all of that, what is taking place in our code? So line 1 is being fed in, and then it's going to run this line. Okay, does line 1 start with A? False. Does line 1 start with B? False. And then it's going to hit line 2 here, and it's going to be, okay, does line 2 start with A? True. Okay, I'm going to print this. Does line 2 start with B? False. No, I'm not going to print it. Then it's going to hit line 3, and it's going to be, does line 3 start with A? False. Does line 3 start with B? True. And it's going to do that line by line. A lot of people want to read the code is thinking it's going to read the whole file against the code that you do, but that's not. It only processes one record at a time. And that right there will really stump some people when it comes to the exam. All right, let's do an external script right here. Maybe you're doing good on time, so 6. Actually, let's open that. I like the syntax highlighting here. All right, so on this one, pretty simple. We've done this already. I'm just basically showing you the difference of running it as a script versus, running it within Bash. So this right here is just setting if NR is greater than 1, then it's just going to print the record. So something so simple right here. But if we actually write it as a script, then we can kind of run it how we normally run things, just with the // Of course, it has to have execute permissions. If we write that thing as a text file and feed it in, of course, the text file doesn't have to have any execute permissions because it's not actually being executed. It's just code being fed to awk. And then we need to feed it, of course, our actual argument or the source file here because it's data driven. And you can see it's just going to sit there and print all those records, and it skipped that first record because of the NR greater than 1 there. And so I don't tend to write any awk using an awk script. It's not something that I tend to do. I like being able to have Bash open for me to use. And so it's just more robust that way. So I don't spend a whole lot of time on it. Logical operators, just in case you want to know how those work, we can do one of those real fast. So we'll just do a column, see if the column is equal to purple here. And then if we'll stop right there and just give it a print. So you can see everything purple there, but I could use a logical operator here and we could say, and $3 here is less than 3. So then we've kind of given it 2 conditions right there. And so it only gives us 1 return. I guess that's the downside, not to have that color prompt right there. It's hard to separate now. So it gives us more room, but no separation. All right. Now this next one is pretty big here. So let's just first open it in Vim. So right here, we have lots of line of code right here, and we'll just walk through it. So this is something that I like to do. I like to, in the begin block, because I'm using printf, that's a lot of just meticulous stuff to write over and over. So why not put it into a variable right here? And so there is my format string. And the best part of this is I could use this format string in like my header at the very beginning, and then I can reference it inside the actual body that's in the for loop, and then I can reference it at the end, and then whatever I do, it's all perfectly in line, even though I did it in all those separate locations. So keep that in mind. This is a great shortcut right there. So here we have our printf, and then we have our format string, and we can't put that in quotes because there's nothing to differentiate it there. And then I just have my arguments right here. So there's the line number, there's the entire record being fed in right here to this one. And then I have a little custom message that's going to be in each one of these. So all of this gets repeated, the record number, and then the entire record. And then we have just a custom message. So moving out of our begin block, you can see we've just got if nr is equal to 1, then we're going to have this being printed. And then it's going to have the tagline of first record. So this is only going to happen one time. And then we have these conditions right here. I'm going to see, okay, if the third column is greater than 8, then we just got the custom message of 8 or higher. Here, if the third column is greater than or equal to 5, then it's 5 or higher. And then we have this other condition right here that if the number is greater than or equal to 3, then it does nothing. Nothing at all. And then right here, this is kind of, there's no pattern. So this is kind of the default right here. It's just going to print. All right. So now this right here is going to be really ugly, but it's going to prove a point that I'm going to get to here. So let's go ahead and run it. So that way we can see what its output is. So if we take a look, of course, this was that first record. So nr equals 1. Well, that was true. So it printed the first record. Then if we look, is this the same one? S1 colors? Yes. So if we look over here, that was that first record that was printed. Now we're looking over here. So is 4, sorry. Is it 8 or higher? Well, I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm trying to move to line 2. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So because of the ASCII table, the amount, it's 8 or higher, it's 5 or higher. And then, of course, it is greater than 3, but 3 had no action, so it's not doing anything. So then we get that default of the entire record. It feeds into 2 right here. And of course, 2, it's not greater than 8. It's not greater than 6. So 4 gets triggered. Actually, no, it's sorry. It was 5, it's not 5, and it's not 3, and then it hits that default one of the entire record. And then of course we go to 6, so it's not, or 8 would be false, 5 would be true, and of course the entire record would be true. So again, really messy, probably not what we want, but this is also a good example of how I told you, depending on how you code your stuff, you could get multiple lines for every single line of output. So this one right here, single line of output, got 4 lines. Or a single line of input, got 4 lines of output. Now let's go back in here and actually use the next command. So if you'll see, I had it all commented out here. So this is actually going to give us the results that we want if we next that. So what next is going to do is if it hits right here, so if 8 is true, if it's greater than or equal to 8, then it's going to run this action. of one print and then next. And what next tells it to do is stop processing the code, delete what's in the buffer and move to the next line, load that into the buffer and start processing it. So this is going to give us the results that we actually want here. So now if I hit enter, you can see the first record. Oh, it was the first one. It was line 1. Then if we look at line 2 here, that was Apple. So greater than 4. So if you remember, we had greater than 8, greater than 5, and that greater than 3, which was true, but it didn't have an action that printed anything. Its action was to skip that record. So this was true. It was 4 was greater than or equal to 3. And so it just skipped that record and then loaded in another record. So it loaded in 3 here. Of course, 3 is 6. So 8 was false, 5 was true. And then next it loaded another one. We take a look at line 1, 2, 3, 4. It was 3. So again, 3 gets skipped and so on and so forth right here. So that next is a really valuable tool that you can use in that. Any questions on that? Right here. Okay, that was, if we go back, open that up. So plum 2. So the number's 2. So again, this would be false because it's already ran. 8 would be false because it's not greater. It's not greater than 5. It's not greater than 3. And then the last one was, okay, I have no condition whatsoever. If none of these other conditions are met, then it's just going to print. That's it. So just kind of showing you how we had actions with no print statement here, or sorry, a pattern with no action, kind of. The action was next, but you just like nothing that's going to be displayed. Here you had a pattern with a print, and then here you had no pattern, but you have an action. So it's just going to act on the entire record. Okay, yeah, this is a good one right here. All right, so I'm just going to cat out this S4 so you can see our record here. So that's our record. Now, let's see. I've also got this file over here. Yeah, this is the one I want to use right here. So I'm going to do this one. So this is the same file of that one, only it has some duplicate data. You can see that the IDs are all 100 here. So I'm wanting to remove all the duplicate data. Of course, we know how we can do that. We've done it before. So we could say sort. So what do I need to do to get this sorted properly first? Somebody give me some commands. I will tell you the delimiter. Well, I'll see if anybody can remember first, but I won't make you remember it for the exam. Anybody remember how to specify the delimiter? So it's what, -T, perfect. So I could set that equal to T. Now, if I want to sort by the ID column, anybody remember what I put there? Okay, so 1, 1. Anything else that needs to be added to that?
Dash specifying numerical.
Almost. The -N, if I put like the -N out here, that would be global. We don't. Yes, yes. So if I just tag it on, it's not really a dash, but I get what you're saying there. So we had the -N or N applied to that. So now we can take a look at that. And now you can see, okay, all the 100s, they're perfectly in line. Now, if I want to get rid of everything else, does anybody know of a quick tool that I could do? There's actually multiple ways of doing it. What's something that's really quick?
Did you say get rid or get rid of?
Yeah, I want to get rid of everything that is a duplicate. So right here, you can see this is all duplicate data right there. I don't want that in there. So we could pipe it to unique. Sort also has a unique feature. I can't remember what it is. So we could have included that with sort itself. So now you can see I've narrowed it down to, I use the ID here, sorted it by the ID. So they're all in line. Unique makes everything that is a duplicate that's touching one another to go away. All right, so now I have that data, and now I can then pipe that to awk. And so I've got awk. This is my data that's now going to be sent to it. So if I want to actually use awk to filter this down a little bit, what was the first thing I would have to do here? Perfect. You have to do it again. So we could do -F, we could do the FS, but we'll use the -F. It's a little bit easier. And then now I just have a script that we're going to run on it right here. And again, because I piped it to it, I don't have to actually do any, type of, send a source file to it. Because I'm using the -F, I don't have to put single quotes on the command line, but here you hit enter and all it is sending it to a printf here that's going to format the data and add the line numbers at the beginning there. All right, getting close to the end here, we got some arrays. So let's take a look at this right here. So let's cat out S6. Here is the data that we're working with. We're going to open Vim right here. And so I just got the begin block. So what's this going to change? All right, so everything will be separated by colons. What am I doing? Or well, it's kind of there. Removing kind of the header right here. Or sorry, not removing the header. I'm just saying if it's the first record right there, then I want to print this kind of header right here. And then it's going to hit next. And then I have an array set up. And then I'm using $1 right here as a key. So if we take a look, we have Apple here, we have Apple there. It's kind of the only two. We got several bananas right here. So that's what I'm using as a key there. And then I'm saying for every time that banana is repeated, then I'm going to add the numbers right here in column 3 right there. So it's going to basically count. Okay, so this is kind of my inventory. I've got 6 bananas. So once it sees the second one, it would then be 12 bananas. And then at the end here, I just got the array that I'm looping through and giving me kind of a summary of all that information. So let's actually run it here. So /array and then do S6, hit enter. Then you can see there's kind of our header, the number of unique items. Potato was 9, banana 36. So it just kind of use that. Remember that in awk, we can only use associative arrays. So that's how we're kind of building that array out, just using the data as our keys there. All right. This last thing is kind of just a crazy scenario, but I wanted to show you how you can integrate kind of bash into awk and how, I guess, confusing it can be to read it. So we got another file at cars over here. So I got a list of cars that we're going to work with, and then we'll open, there it is, manufacturers.sh. So here we're doing kind of the generic thing. We're just checking the number of arguments. And then of course, if it doesn't pass, it's going to give us this usage statement telling us how, what it wants there. Of course, I'm redirecting it to standard error and I got my exit code and then I'm ending my if statement. I just kind of made it all in one line there. And then just to be a little bit more clear as to what I'm doing, my first argument, $1, that is what is going to select the column. So I'm basically going to select some information out of here. So again, these are all numbered right here. So I could pass in 1 and it's going to select the Chevy or I guess, yeah, Chevy, Plymouth, whatever. There's not really a title to that one. And then $2 is going to be the input file. So that is going to be, okay, the cars.txt. So I can give it any single file that I want to. And then another way of passing information to awk. So I have awk right here. I'm redirecting my input file. So once I run this, the cars.txt, which would be my second argument, it's being passed into awk. Then we have all of our awk code. And of course, we're in a bash script, so we have to separate the bash from awk. So we put the single quotes right there. Now, here is the actual awk code. So in here, you can see I start, I don't have a pattern. I just have an action. My action is actually an array called count. And in the array, I'm giving it a string of $. And this is the crazy part. So you see the single quote right there. So in reality, that line right here is awk code. Now I'm outside of awk. Now I'm using bash to interpret the bash variable right there. Now I'm going to restart my awk code from here to here. And so it's going to do that plus plus. So it's going to increment this value right here. And then of course at the end spit it out. And then you can see I got this pipe right here, and just to kind of differentiate it, I just moved it down to this other line. So it's going to send all of this that awk did, and it's going to send it to sort, and it's going to sort it for us. So if we take a look at what we're actually doing, so if I say run this with column 1, so I'm passing the number 1 to this. And so bash is going to evaluate that, and it's going to say 1. So then this column will say $1 plus plus. Well, what is $1 to awk? First column there. So that's why I had to put this right here, because if I didn't, then it would just be 1 and it would have no meaning within awk. So I put the literal string of $, and then outside of awk, I put bash, so it's $1. So let's actually run the code and see how it works. So ManuF, if I enter, of course, the manufacturer is saying that, you know, it needs a field and then a file. So we'll give it field1 and we'll give it cars.txt. We're going to hit enter here. And now you can see what's taking place. It used the $1 as the key, and then it added everything to right here that was kind of did a count. So for how many unique items. So if we take a look, Chevy in here, there's a Chevy, there's a Chevy, and there's a Chevy. So there's 3 Chevys in the file. And what's cool about this is we're not limited. Let's see, what are all the unique years that are in here? Well, there it is, 3. So 1965 is only once, and really we've got just 1985 and then 2003 that is repeated. We could even do column 2 there. You can see that there's 2 Malibus, everything else is unique. So that right there is really mixing some things up and making it very difficult to read your awk code, because you've got bash being processed right in the middle of it. And then you had that strange syntax of even redirecting an input or redirecting your file into awk at the beginning instead of kind of at the end, or using a pipe to send to it. So there's multiple ways of getting information into awk there. All right. So how do we feel about awk? Okay. Once you get in and play with it, it'll make a lot more sense. It's actually really, really fun. It's really funny to me because once I hit this point, some people in the class like awk really registers, and a few people struggle with it. But then I have people what I consider like awk ninjas in this class, and they just really resonate with this, and they probably just do most of their stuff in awk on the bash script, of course, or I say the bash script on the final project. But just keep in mind that I tell you have to mix some stuff in there. In other words, I don't want it all written in bash. I don't want it all written in awk. You know, try to mix it up. I want to see that you know how to use both there. So just don't use one at the exclusion of the other. All right. Any questions before we go? All right. Just a reminder, the exam review, we will do that on Tuesday, and then our exam will be on Thursday. So have a good weekend.
You sending us up now saying something about bonus points on Tuesday?